subscribe and like the video. I don't know, man. Just because they do one good thing, does it make them good people and they're simultaneously doing 50 bad things? Wait, what? Just because they do one good thing? Dude, the argument is simple, okay? America, during World War II, was segregationist, homophobic, misogynistic, patriarchal society, okay? And yet, we still, and I myself included, cheer for easy company, okay? What? Do you want to know why? Because they were fighting against the scourge. That's it. And if you can make that calculation in your mind for America and the American military being on the right side of history, you can understand a very similar dynamic ever present in this conversation. That's it, okay? There's never been a moment where I've said, like, the Ansar Allah's banner is totally valid and awesome, okay? I have been critical. I have actually openly stated numerous times, of course, that anti-Semitism is completely unacceptable. Anti-Semitism also very much existed within the American military and the American government at the time, mind you, during World War II. But that doesn't stop me from looking at a situation like that and saying, hey, those boys, I salute them every day of the week, okay? And that's it. I love FDR. I talk about how America still relies on the New Deal. America still benefits from the New Deal's implementation, okay? Creating bountiful infrastructure where commerce could flow. FDR did a lot of good. You know what else he did? Internment camps for the Japanese. FDR also did a lot of bad for black people, cutting them out of the New Deal. And yet, I can still champion a lot of his policies, regardless of those other aspects. So many people, I think, turn into the one friend who's being too woke when it comes to this kind of analysis. Do you see what I'm saying? That's it. And applying this sort of nuance to the conversation should never be considered. Okay? That's it. It's just a way to say, shut the up. Anyway, Hasan, your chat is so hostile. No one can ever learn. It's because you're spamming this. This is like not a productive thing to spam. So much so that Fossabot literally timed you out. And I'm untiming you out. And then Fossabot keeps timing you out because you keep spamming it over and over again. It doesn't seem like you're in here to learn anything. There's an argument that FDR's social democrat policies delayed the proper conditions for a true proletariat movement in America. Yes, that is the correct argument. Yes, social democracy is an extension. The welfare state is simply a lifeline for capitalism to continue. It's just, I'm outraged, now defend yourself. I know. Libs talk about systemic racism, but can't apply it globally. All right, let's get back to our two demons in the White House.
And thank you very much with your staff. He's the first foreign head of state to visit during our administration. And Bibi, I want to say it's an honor to have you with us. Over the past 4 years, the U.S. and the Israeli alliance has been tested more than any time in history. But the bonds of friendship and affection between the American and Israeli people have endured for generations, and they are absolutely unbreakable. They are unbreakable.
Unbreakable.
I'm confident that under our leadership, the alliance between our two countries will soon be stronger than ever.
Unbreakable.
Great relationship. We had great victories together 4 years ago. Not so many victories over the past 4 years, however. In my first term, Prime Minister and I forged a tremendously successful partnership that brought peace and stability to the Middle East like it hadn't seen in decades. Together, we defeated ISIS. We ended the disastrous Iran nuclear deal, one of the worst deals ever made, by the way, and imposed the toughest ever sanctions on the Iranian regime. We starved Hamas and Iran's other proxies, and we starved them like they had never seen before. Resources and support disappeared for them. I recognized Israel's capital, opened the American embassy in Jerusalem, and got it built, by the way. Built it too, just not only designated it, but got it built at a price that nobody's seen for 40 years. We got it built, it's beautiful, all Jerusalem stone, right from nearby, and it's something that's very special. And recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, something that they talked about for 70 years, and they weren't able to get it, and I got it. And with the historic Abraham
I got
Accord,
it.
something that was really an achievement that was, I think, going to become more and more important because we achieved the most significant Middle East peace agreements in half a century, but the Abraham Accords in particular. And I really believe that many countries will soon be joining this amazing peace and economic development transaction. It really is a big economic development transaction. I think we're going to have a lot of people signing up very quickly. Unfortunately, for 4 years, nobody signed up. Nobody did anything for 4 years except in the negative. Unfortunately, the weakness and incompetence of those years, those past 4 years, the grave damage around the globe that was done, including in the Middle East, grave damage all over the globe. The horrors of October 7th would never have happened if I were president. The Ukraine and Russia disaster would never have happened if I were president. Over the past 16 months, Israel has endured a sustained, aggressive, and murderous assault on every front, but they fought back bravely. You see that, and you know that. What we have witnessed is an all-out attack on the very existence of a Jewish state in the Jewish homeland. The Israelis have stood strong and united in the face of an enemy that has kidnapped, tortured, raped, and slaughtered innocent men, women, children, and even little babies. I want to salute the Israeli people for meeting
Yes,
this
that is a
trial
war
with
criminal.
courage and determination and unflinching resolve. They have been strong. In our meetings today, the Prime Minister and I focused on the future, discussing how we can work together to ensure Hamas is eliminated and ultimately restore peace to a very troubled region. It's been troubled, but what's happened in the last 4 years has not been good. I want to thank Prime Minister Netanyahu for working closely with my transition team, the Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, who's here somewhere. Steve? Stand up, Steve, please. What a job you've done. What a good job you've done. Proud of you. Done a fantastic job. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. Thank you, Mike, for working so well with us. Thank you. We have, in addition, Marco Rubio, who is on the phone right now, listening to every single word that we say, and he's going to be great. And Pete, congratulations. And Scott, congratulations. I see you're here. And Caroline's been doing a great job. She's really probably talked about more
Little
than
Marco.
anybody here. She's done a fantastic job, and thank you very much, Caroline. We're proud of you. But we'll only be satisfied when all of these problems are solved, and we have the team to solve them, and that's going to happen. And it's going to happen, I think, very quickly. I also strongly believe that the Gaza Strip, which has been a symbol of death and destruction for so many decades, and so bad for the people anywhere near it, and especially those who live there, and frankly, who's been really very unlucky. It's been very unlucky. It's been an unlucky place for a long time. Being in its presence just has not been good, and it should not go through a process of rebuilding and occupation by the same people that have really stood there and fought for it and lived there and died there and lived a miserable existence there. Instead, we should go to other countries of interest with humanitarian hearts, and there are many of them that want to do this, and build various domains that will ultimately be occupied by the 1.8 million Palestinians living in Gaza, ending the death and destruction and, frankly, bad luck. This can be paid for by neighboring countries of great wealth. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 12. It could be numerous sites, or it could be one large site. But the people will be able to live in comfort and peace, and we'll make sure something really spectacular is done. They're going to have peace. They're not going to be shot at and killed and destroyed like this civilization of wonderful people has had to endure. The only reason the Palestinians want to go back to Gaza is they have no alternative. It's right now a demolition site. This is just a demolition site. Virtually every building is down. They're living under fallen concrete that's very dangerous and very precarious. They instead can occupy all of a beautiful area with homes and safety, and they can live out their lives in peace and harmony instead of having to go back and do it again. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years. I'm hopeful that this ceasefire could be the beginning of a larger and more enduring peace that will end the bloodshed and killing once and for all. With the same goal in mind, my administration has been moving quickly to restore trust in the alliance and rebuild American strength throughout the region. And we've really done that. We're a respected nation again. A lot's happened in the last couple of weeks. We are actually a very respected nation again. I ended the last administration's de facto arms embargo on over $1 billion in military assistance for Israel. And I'm also pleased to announce that this afternoon, the United States withdrew from the anti-Semitic UN Human Rights Council and ended all of the support for the UN Relief and Works Agency, which funneled money to Hamas and which was very disloyal to humanity. Today, I also took action to restore a maximum pressure policy on the Iranian regime, and we will once again enforce the most aggressive possible sanctions, drive Iranian oil exports to zero, and diminish the regime's capacity to fund terror throughout the region and throughout the world. We had no threat when I left office. Iran was not able to sell oil. Nobody was buying oil because I said, don't buy it. If you buy it, you're not doing any business with the United States. And Hamas was not being funded. Hezbollah was not being funded. Nobody was being funded. There would never have been an October 7th. 2 weeks ago, I once again designated the Houthis as a terrorist organization. They're trying to destroy world shipping lanes, and that's not going to happen. And over the weekend, I ordered airstrikes against senior ISIS leaders hiding in the caves of Somalia and took them out. Here in America, we've begun the process of deporting foreign terrorists, jihadists, and Hamas sympathizers from our soil, just as we have people that are extremely evil, and we're sending them out of our country. They came from jails. They came from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they were dumped into our country. They're gang members. We're getting them out at numbers that nobody can actually believe. And every single country is taking those people back. They said they would never take them back, and they're all taking them back, and they're taking them back very gladly. And I recently signed an executive order combating the vile wave of anti-Semitism that we've seen in the aftermath of the October 7th attacks. Together, America and Israel will renew the optimism that shined so brightly just 4 years ago. It was really a bright, beautiful light. We will restore calm and stability to the region and expand prosperity, opportunity, and hope to our nations and for all people of the Middle East, including the Arab and Muslim nations. Very important. We want the Arab and Muslim nations to have peace and have tranquility and have great lives. I'd like to now invite Prime Minister Netanyahu to say a few words, and we'll take some questions afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm honored that you invited me to be the first foreign leader to visit the White House in your second term. This is a testament to your friendship and support for the Jewish state and the Jewish people. I've said this before, I'll say it again. You are the greatest friend Israel has ever had in the White House. And that's why the people of Israel have such enormous respect for you. In your first term, you recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. You moved the American embassy there. You recognized Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. You withdrew from the disastrous Iran nuclear deal. I remember we spoke about it. You said, this is the worst deal I've ever seen. I'm elected, I'm walking out of it. That's exactly what you did. And I think it speaks loudly for just common sense, just looking at things and seeing them as they are. And of course, you also brokered the groundbreaking Abraham Accords in which Israel made peace with 4 Arab states. We did this in 4 months. Nothing happened for a quarter of a century, but in 4 months, we were able, working together under your leadership, to have 4 historic peace. And now in the first days of your second term, you picked up right where you left off. Your leadership to help bring our hostages home, among them American citizens. You freed up munitions that have been withheld from Israel. They had been withheld from Israel in the midst of a 7-front war for our existence. And you just freed it. You ended unjust sanctions against law-abiding Israeli citizens. You boldly confronted the scourge of anti-Semitism. You stopped funding, as you just said, international organizations like UNRWA that support and fund terror. And today, you renewed the maximum pressure campaign against Iran. Ladies and gentlemen, all this in just 2 weeks. Can we imagine where we'll be in 4 years? I can. I know you can, Mr. President. For our part, we in Israel have been pretty busy too. Since the horrendous October 7th attack, we've been fighting our common enemies and changing the face of the Middle East.
Oh,
On
yeah.
that infamous day, Hamas monsters savagely murdered 1,200 innocent people, including more than 40 Americans. They beheaded men, they raped women, they burnt babies alive, and they took 251 people to the dungeons of Gaza. And after this worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust,
It's crazy
Iran
that he
and its
still lies
henchmen
about
in the
that.
Middle East were absolutely ecstatic. Haniya praised the massacre. Sinwar said that Israel was finished. Nasrallah boasted that Israel was, here's what he said, as feeble as a spider's web. Well, Mr. President, Haniya is gone, Sinwar is gone, Nasrallah is gone. We've devastated Hamas, we decimated Hezbollah, we destroyed Assad's remaining armament, and we crippled Iran's air defense. And in doing this, we've defeated some of America's worst enemies. We took out terrorists who were wanted for decades for shedding rivers of American blood, including the blood of 241 Marines murdered in Beirut. We accomplished all this with the indomitable spirit of our people and the boundless courage of our soldiers. The Bible says that the people of Israel shall rise like lions, and boy did we rise. Today, the roar of the Lion of Judah is heard loudly throughout the Middle East. Israel has never been stronger, and the Iran terror axis has never been weaker. But as we discussed, Mr. President, to secure our future and bring peace to our region, we have to finish the job. In Gaza, Israel has 3 goals: destroy Hamas's military and governing capabilities, secure the release of all of our hostages, and ensure that Gaza never again poses a threat to Israel. I believe, Mr. President, that your willingness to puncture conventional thinking that has failed time and time and time again, your willingness to think outside the box with fresh ideas will help us achieve all these goals. And I've seen you do this many times. You cut to the chase. You see things others refuse to see. You say things others refuse to say. And after the jaws drop, people scratch their head and they say, you know, he's right. And this is the kind of thinking that enabled us to bring the Abraham Accords. This is the kind of thinking that will reshape the Middle East and bring peace. We also see eye to eye on Iran. That's the same Iran that tried to kill us both. They tried to kill you, Mr. President. They tried through their proxies to kill me. We're both committed to rolling back Iran's aggression in the region and ensuring that Iran never develops a nuclear weapon. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, Israel will end the war by winning the war. Israel's victory will be America's victory. We will not only win the war, working together, we will win the peace. With your leadership, Mr. President, and our partnership, I believe that we will forge a brilliant future for our region and bring our great alliance to even greater heights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, baby. Very nice. Thank you. And J.D. Vance, everybody. J.D., please, Vice President, stand up. He's been doing a good job. He's been working very hard on all things, but this
Fake
in
Catholic.
particular. We'll take some questions, please. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, please. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
President, can a normalization deal with Saudi Arabia be achieved without the acknowledgement of a Palestinian state? And Mr. President, given what you've said about Gaza, did the U.S. send troops to help secure the security vacuum?
So Saudi Arabia is going to be very helpful, and they have been very helpful. They want peace in the Middle East. It's very simple. We know their leader and their leaders very well. They're
What PC are you
wonderful
using?
people,
My
and they
own?
want peace in the Middle East. As far as Gaza is concerned, we'll do what is necessary. If it's necessary, we'll.
So he said he's going to take over the Gaza Strip. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we'll do a good job with it too. President Trump says, suggesting plans to rebuild the area. Trump repeats his earlier suggestion that Palestinians leave Gaza to go to neighboring countries. Egypt and Jordan have outright rejected this previously. Once again, going back to the same dynamic that I explained prior, which is they're taking a more hands-on approach to the colonialism. They're taking a more hands-on approach to the violence, and I think this is precisely in that, in that same vein.
Owning it, especially the strength that we're developing and developed over the last fairly short period of time. I would say really since the election. I think we'll be a keeper of something that is very, very strong, very powerful, and very, very good for the area, not just for Israel, for the entire Middle East. Very important. And we'll, again, have thousands of jobs, and there'll be jobs for everyone, not for a specific group of people, but for everybody. Okay, please.
I think peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia is not only feasible, I think it's going to happen. I think if we had another half a year in your first term, it would have already happened.
True. Many, many more, I agree, many more nations.
I think you can't prejudge and pre-guess how we'll achieve it, but I'm committed to achieving it. And I know the president is committed to achieving it, and I think the Saudi leadership is interested to achieve it. So we'll give it a good shot, and I think we'll succeed.
Yeah, please, go ahead. Well, I can't tell you whether or not the ceasefire will hold. We've done, I think, a very masterful job. We weren't helped very much by the Biden administration, I can tell you that. But we've gotten quite a few hostages out. We're going to get more out. But we're dealing with very complex people.
Wait.
And we are going to see whether
Bro, ask the guy next to you.
We want to have more come out.
Ask the guy next to you. He's the one who's going to f it up. What do you mean? Oh, I can't tell you with confidence if the ceasefire will hold.
But they're going to get better.
You're next to the guy.
And they're going to have a good life.
What do you mean?
And we hope to get
He's
as
right
many
there.
as
Does
possible
nobody
out.
see
Whether
him?
or not it holds, I don't know.
He's
We
on
hope it
screen.
holds. We hope it holds.
I think that at the appropriate time, which I think will enable us to really investigate what happens, what were the causes of the failure, by an independent commission that will be accepted by the majority of the people. We don't want it accepted by one half of the people and not the other.
I know.
we
He
should
said
have
that
it.
he's going to take over the Gaza
And we
Strip.
should
I
find
know.
out exactly what happened.
I
I'm
heard him.
insisting on it. And believe me, it'll surprise a lot of people when it happens.
Kelly, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister. You are talking tonight about the United States taking over a sovereign territory. What authority would allow you to do that? Are you talking about a permanent redevelopment? And Mr. Prime Minister, do you see this idea as a way to expand the boundaries of Israel and to have a longer peace? Even
How
though
can you
the
stay
Israeli
sane while
people
listening
know
to this?
How important that land is to you and your citizens.
I don't know. I just expect the worst from the start.
Space is inherited by the Palestinians.
It allows me to be more
I do see a long-term
composed.
ownership position, and I see it bringing great stability to that part of the Middle East and maybe the entire Middle East. And everybody I've spoken to, this was not a decision made lightly. Everybody I've spoken to loves the idea of the United States owning that piece of land, developing and creating thousands of jobs with something that will be magnificent in a really magnificent area that nobody would know. Nobody can look because all they see is death and destruction and rubble and demolished buildings falling all over. It's just a terrible sight. I've studied it. I've studied this.
Who did it?
Very closely over a lot of months, and I've seen it
Who
from
did it?
every different angle. And it's a very, very dangerous place to be, and it's only going to get worse. And I think this is an idea that's gotten tremendous, and I'm talking about from the highest level of leadership, gotten tremendous praise. And if the United States can help to bring stability and peace in the Middle East, we'll do that. Bibi?
I mentioned again tonight our three goals, and the third goal is to make sure that Gaza never poses a threat to Israel again. President Trump is taking it to a much higher. He sees a different future for that piece of land that has been the focus of so many attacks against us, so many trials and so many tribulations. He has a different idea. And I think it's worth paying attention to this. We're talking about it. He's exploring it with his people, with his staff. I think it's something that could change history. And it's worthwhile really pursuing this out.
Yeah, please, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
And then rebuild.
We're working very hard to get all the hostages. The
America
word is
first out the
all,
window?
and we are working very
Chatter.
hard.
There was
So
never
far, it's
an
been
America first principle. What do you mean? Even the terrorists
fairly
themselves don't
rapid,
actually
pretty
yield
much on
America first
schedule.
principles at all.
I'd love to have more
America first is just pure marketing so that you can put profits first. You can put war first. You can put profiteers that want to rebuild Gaza first, and then the real estate developers that come in afterwards.
If we don't, it will just
It's capitalism first,
make
always
us,
and forever.
Somewhat more violent. I will tell you that, because they would have broken their word. Mr. Witkoff and his entire group have been working 24 hours around the clock, and they want them out, and promises have been made to them, and we'll see whether or not those promises will be kept. But we want all the hostages, that's right.
How much time do you think it will take? A month?
Do you support, Mr. President, do you support Israeli sovereignty in Judea and Samaria, areas which many believe is the biblical homeland of the Jewish people?
That's a great
We're
question,
discussing
man.
that
That's
with,
totally...
many of your representatives, you're represented very well, and people do like the idea, but we haven't taken a position on it yet. But we will be we'll be making an announcement probably on that very specific topic over the next 4 weeks. Go ahead, please.
Holy fuck.
You just said that you think all the Palestinians should be relocated to other countries. Does that mean that you do not support a two-state solution?
It doesn't mean anything about a two-state or one state or any other state. It means that we want to have, we want to give people a chance at life. They have never had a chance at life because the Gaza Strip has been a hellhole for people living there. It's been horrible. Hamas has made it so bad, so dangerous, so unfair to people. And by doing what I'm recommending that we do, it's a very strong recommendation, but it is a strong recommendation. By doing that, we think we're going to bring perhaps great peace to long beyond this area. And I have to stress, this is not for Israel. This is for everybody in the Middle East, Arabs, Muslims. This is for everybody. This would be where they can partake in terms of jobs and living and all of the other benefits. And I think it's very important. It just doesn't work the other way. You know, you can't keep trying. They just has been going along for so many decades, you can't even count. You just can't keep doing. You have to learn from history. You can't keep doing the same mistake over and over again. Gaza is a hellhole right now. It was before the bombing started, frankly. And we're going to give people a chance to live in a beautiful community that's safe and secure. And I think you're going to see a tremendous outflowing of support. I can tell you, I spoke to other leaders of countries in the Middle East, and they love the idea. They say it would really bring stability, and what we need is stability. Yes, sir, please. Go ahead.
Thank you. Are you still committed to imposing sanctions on the ICC, despite the move being stalled in the Senate? And please, a question for the Prime Minister as well. The President has been very clear about his desire to achieve a deal with Saudi Arabia. How do you settle this if Israel is required to renew the war against Hamas in the future?
That's literally Channel
Go ahead,
14. That's Benjamin Netanyahu's channel.
I think everybody understands that just as the President fought and defeated Al-Qaeda and ISIS, that we can't leave Hamas there because Hamas will continue the battle to destroy Israel. They'll do, you know, when in this temporary ceasefire, one of their leaders comes out, you know what he says? We're going to do October 7th again, except we'll do it bigger. So obviously, you can't talk about peace neither with Hamas or in the Middle East if this, you know, toxic murderous organization is left standing. Any more that you could make peace in Europe after World War II if the Nazi regime was left standing and the Nazi army was left standing. You want a
That did
future,
happen,
you
by
gotta
the way.
knock out the people
But
who want
you
to
guys are
destroy
also
you,
closer to the
destroy
Nazis
peace.
in this
That's what we're
situation.
gonna do.
Israel is the
I
Nazis
think
in this
that will
equation.
also bring, usher
For the
in,
record.
actually, the peace with
Make
Saudi
no
Arabia
mistake.
and with others. And I think there will be others too.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Not only did the United States of America do that already,
do you have any plan to change Afghanistan situation? Are you able to recognize Taliban? Because I'm an Afghan journalist, Afghan suffrage woman. Any comment about Afghanistan? What's your future plan for Afghan people, especially Afghanistan?
I have a little hard time understanding you. Where are you from? Oh. Actually, it's a beautiful voice and a beautiful accent. The only problem is I can't understand a word you're saying. But,
Oh
but
my
I just say
God.
this.
Oh
good
my
luck.
God.
Live in peace. Go ahead, please. That's okay. Yeah, please.
You said earlier today that it was tough for you to implement these sanctions on Iran, but you did indicate that you were willing to negotiate with them. What would that look like, and are you in conversations with them? And the same for the Prime Minister, sir.
I hated doing it. I want Iran to be peaceful and successful. I hated doing it. I did it once before, and we brought them down to a level where they were unable to give any money. They had to survive themselves, and they had no money. They were essentially broke, and they had no money for, as I said, Hezbollah. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for any form of terror. The 28, if you call it, the 28 sites of terror.
the chatter saying Israel cannot be Nazi. You should tell that to Benjamin Netanyahu. You know, tell him to stop being a Nazi then.
And I hate to do it just as much now. And I say this, and I say this to Iran, who's listening very intently. I would love to be able to make a great deal, a deal where you can get on with your lives and you'll do wonderfully. You'll do wonderfully. Incredible people, industrious, beautiful, just an unbelievable group of people in Iran. And I know them well, have many friends from Iran and many friends that are Americans from Iran, and they're very proud of Iran. But I hated to do it, just so you understand. And I hope we're going to be able to do something so that it doesn't end up in a very catastrophic situation. I don't want to see that happen. I really want to see peace, and I hope that we're able to do that. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. I'm not putting restrictions. They cannot have one thing. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. And if I think that they will have a nuclear weapon, despite what I just said, I think that's going to be very unfortunate for them. If, on the other hand, they can convince us that they won't, and I hope they can. It's very easy to do. It's actually very easy to do. I think they're going to have an unbelievable future. Yeah, please, sir, go ahead.
Laid out your plan for Gaza.
Yes.
Can you lay out your plan for Ukraine and also...
For Ukraine?
For Ukraine, yes. You consider yourself a strong leader. You blamed your predecessor for letting Russia to take over Ukraine. Will you demand from Putin to get out of Ukraine, from sovereign territory of Ukraine?
So we're dealing right now on the subject. I don't want to spend a lot of time because we're here for another reason, but we are having very good talks, very constructive talks on Ukraine. And we are talking to the Russians. We're talking to the Ukrainian leadership. It would have never happened. That would have never happened. It should have never happened. I get reports every week, the number of soldiers, mostly soldiers now. The cities have been largely demolished. You talk about a very sad sight to see. We talk Gaza. Well, many of these cities look as bad as Gaza and worse, what's happened to them. And I want to see that end. And I want to see it end for one simple reason, the life of young people being absolutely obliterated on both sides. You probably have 700,000 Ukrainian soldiers dead, 800,000, maybe more Russian soldiers dead. It's very flat land, and the only thing that's going to stop a bullet is a human body, in this case, usually soldiers. And the numbers are staggering when you hear the real numbers in Ukraine, what the numbers are. And this doesn't include the cities that have been demolished and all of the people that were killed. So I want to see it stopped. We're having very good
talking about Ukraine in this way immediately after, even though Trump does exercise a level of empathy towards Russia that definitely doesn't exist for the Palestinians, is such an obvious glaringly obvious hypocrisy to just be like, oh, it's really devastating for Ukrainian cities. Like, meanwhile, it's just like,
it is a human tragedy, and we're going to try very hard to stop it. Yeah, please.
Like, is he gonna tell the Ukrainians to move? Actually, with Donald Trump, I don't even want to know the answer to that, to be honest. He's gonna be like, yeah, well, we just gotta get 30 million Ukrainians to move. They're all Slavic anyway. They can go to Poland. They are already in Poland. They could go to Poland. The more I talk about it, the more I'm thinking maybe he will say that. So obviously, let's not,
We fully agree with that.
But Russians are the Israelis and Ukrainians are the Palestinians in this situation.
So be it.
No, I know that. I'm saying he's gonna. At first, I was gonna say it demonstrates this like glaringly obvious hypocrisy where he understands the humanity of the Ukrainians, but it's Donald Trump, so he doesn't really understand that either. So in some ways, it's not. Anyway,
It's a campaign of pressure to see if we can get something done. He doesn't want to do what some people think will automatically happen because they're very difficult people to deal with, as you know. But if we could solve this problem without warfare, without all of the things that you've been witnessing over the last number of years, it would be, I think it would be a tremendous thing. Go ahead, please.
Do you have any...
To visit where? Oh, I love Israel. I will visit there, and I'll.
Russians aren't the same as Israelis. Are you insane?
Arabia, and I'll visit.
It's reductive, but in this dynamic, the Russian state's actions in Ukraine are quite similar to, are definitely closer to Israelis' actions in Gaza. The Israeli government's actions in Gaza. What are you talking about? Sure, Ukraine is not an occupied territory that is like dominated by the Russian government in perpetuity. In the same way that the Gaza Strip is not an open air prison. But yeah, no, there is definitely a lot more similarities with Russian action in Ukraine to Israeli action in Gaza.
I've been invited.
The only difference is Ukraine is backed by all of the Western powers and is a standing military and is a state with sovereignty, whereas Palestine has never gotten that.
Go ahead.
On what you were saying there.
Say it. Go ahead, please.
Just to follow up on what you were saying about the Gazans leaving Gaza, going to other countries. One, where exactly are you suggesting that they should go? And two, are you saying they should return after it's rebuilt? And if not, who do you envision living?
I envision a world, people living there, the world's people. I think you'll make that into an international, unbelievable place. I think the potential in the Gaza Strip is unbelievable. And I think the entire world, representatives from all over the world will be there, and they'll live there. Palestinians also. Palestinians will live there. Many people will live there. But they've tried the other, and they've tried it for decades and decades and decades. It's not going to work. It didn't
Look at Netanyahu's face when Trump talks about permanent ethnic displacement. He can't even stop himself from smirking.
You just can't let it keep repeating itself. We have an opportunity to do something that could be phenomenal. And I don't want to be cute. I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so bad. This could be so magnificent. But more importantly than that is the people that have been absolutely destroyed that live there now can live in peace in a much better situation because they're living in hell. And those people will now be able to live in peace. We'll make sure that it's done world class. It'll be wonderful for the people. Palestinians mostly we're talking about. And I have a feeling that despite them saying no, I have a feeling that the king in Jordan and that the general president, but that the general in Egypt will open their hearts and will give us the kind of land that we need to get this done. And people can live in harmony and in peace. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, Jordan has already said that that's not going to happen, but it doesn't matter because Jordan is literally already a Western invention to begin with. So I don't know how much pressure they can apply in this process, but it's wonderful because this way you push the Palestinians into Egypt and Jordan, and then a decade later, you can also invade Egypt and Jordan, saying security threats exist. This way, Israel can maintain its Greater Israel project. Here, let's look at what CNN is saying about this this disastrous
Live
press
there.
conference.
Palestinians also. Palestinians will live there. Many people will live there.
American foreign policy only goes in one direction, chat. As I've said time and time again, it's uniparty, and it only goes in one direction, and that direction is evil. Okay? What a lot of Americans, or what a lot of the people in charge right now fail to comprehend here, is that the forcible ethnic displacement of 1.8 million Palestinians in broad daylight to Egypt and Jordan will not only destabilize these countries, right? It will create a gigantic problem in terms of instability for these nations, because every single person under the rulership of Sisi or under the rulership of the Jordanian king recognizes right from wrong and will create unimaginable chaos in the region. Okay. Same with Saudi Arabia. Why do you think MBS still says, hey, I love the nukes. I love you, Donald Trump. You are my guy. Okay. I've given you billions of dollars. You're my buddy. You're my buddy in the White House. I'm happy to play ball with you. But having said that, we got to recognize Palestine. Okay. 67 boundaries. MBS has time and time again maintained the position that he thinks Palestinians are annoying, okay? In the simplest terms, Mohammed bin Salman, the king of Saudi Arabia, Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, has long maintained the position that he considers the Palestinian plight as a nuisance. But why is he still saying we have to make sure that there is some sort of recognition for Palestinian territory? It's because even in Saudi Arabia, the Saudi public is directly at odds with MBS. Okay? If it were up to MBS, he'd be like, yeah, wipe them out. I don't care. Great. Kill them all. Right? I want to be able to do more sports washing. I want to be recognized broadly. I want nukes. I want to be recognized broadly by the Western world. The problem for him, though, is that even his population in Saudi Arabia are very, very frustrated if he were to concede to Israel without any sort of recognition of a Palestinian state. Okay?
President say such words. Never mind the history here that really flies in the face of so much of what he said. But let's just focus on the president himself for one moment. He also said did not back away from the idea of sending U.S. troops to the region. Donald Trump rose in his political prominence because of his opposition to America's longest wars in the Middle East, of course, Iraq and Afghanistan. And there we heard President Trump saying, not ruling out the idea of sending a U.S. Troops to the region. So that, of course, is one issue. But the whole idea of the U.S. owning that, and he was asked there, under what authority would that happen, answering everyone loves the idea. Yep. And, of course, our own Caitlin Collins asking the question there, what happens sort of when it's rebuilt, and envisioning this
USA taking over Gaza, Pog. Dude, that's awesome. I love imagining corn-fed boys from Arkansas going and dying in the Middle East at the behest of our additional state there, Israel. Our military base in the region is far too important for us. So you're just going to go die in the Middle East. Awesome, dude. Sick. Okay, good luck. You're going to get your legs blown off. You're going to get your dick blown off. You're going to come back home if you're lucky, and you'll get some of that sweet health care. Okay, a lot to look forward to. Pog. Yeah. We're dying. We're dying for Israel, baby. Hell yeah. Fantastic. Man, look at Bibi smiling as he sees his domestic coalition reform comfortably after all of this. As is his political survival is secured. You, me, and so many others have been saying this would happen for more than a year, but it somehow still hits like a truck to see with my own eyes. I just pray the world doesn't look away. I don't know what the world is capable of doing if America has its heart set on permanent occupation and permanent death and destruction in the region. I truly don't know. That's the other side of this process. The only country that can save us is China, and China has its own allegiances with Israel, as I've mentioned time and time again. So I don't know. It is incredibly bleak. I'm not going to lie to you.
Building off of what Trump came out and said in his opening statement that built off of what he had been saying all day long, even before the Israeli prime minister arrived here at the White House, which was talking about Palestinians leaving Gaza while it is being rebuilt. He has now suggested twice that Egypt and Jordan could take them. Both of those countries have outright rejected any notion of that happening. And I should note the King of Jordan will be visiting here next week, as the president was just referencing to me there when he was answering my question, and looking at this in terms of what this looks like going forward and how the United States would take ownership of the U.S. Gaza. He left open the idea that American forces could be involved in that. But the real crux of that question is where the Palestinians are supposed to go. There are over 1 million people living in that enclave. And while the president is talking about what it looks like now and how destroyed it has been since this war started 16 months ago, that is the question here, because obviously this is an area that is rife with tension and incredibly sensitive. And what that could look like is a massive question here of what could happen next. And so the president there unable to say where he thinks the Palestinians should go after this, where they would go while Gaza is being rebuilt. He said that they could potentially return to Gaza after that happened. That was the first time that he had suggested that all day long. And obviously is a key question. It is their homeland. It is where the Palestinians live right now. And so the question not just of who is in charge of the Gaza Strip after it would be rebuilt, but clearly you heard the president there essentially viewing this through a real estate lens, saying it could be the Riviera of the Middle East, as he was articulating what this could look like in terms of who lives there and who is in control of it. That has created a ton of questions. What does this mean for the future of the ceasefire tonight, Aaron? I think that hangs in the balance, because there was already a question when the prime minister was arriving here of how that second phase would be carried out and what exactly that would look like. Now, the question is whether or not Hamas still abides by this ceasefire, as they are hearing the American president say that the U.S. is going to take over the land in which Hamas lives now. And of course, many of these Palestinian civilians who have been fleeing this war and already displaced from their homes. And now the U.S. president is suggesting that they could permanently.
Do you think Saudi Arabia and Sunni Arab states will cede to U.S. Israeli demands for Palestinian displacement to refugee camps in neighboring countries? The forcible displacement of 1.8 million is there is no room for ambiguity or plausible deniability whatsoever. Is so fucked, man. Yeah, but don't you understand? He wants to build a Riviera. They're not even hiding it. Like, they're openly just stating mass ethnic displacement of 1.8 million Palestinians indigenous to the land that have already been displaced once to go to the Gaza Strip, out of the Gaza Strip. It is unambiguously ethnic cleansing.
What even would be the reaction within Israel to hear the president of the United States saying what he just said?
CNN's framing of it is
I think,
wrong.
Aaron, we need to be really clear about what we just heard from the president of the United States.
CNN's framing of this is wrong. Okay, they're doing State Department. They're running defense for the State Department, claiming, "Oh no, they'll be able to go back once it's rebuilt." Okay, they can stay there while it's being rebuilt. Then, okay, that's it. They're there right now. They're living in the rubble. Move them into Israel if you want. If you want a guaranteed return to the Gaza Strip, then you got to move them into Israel. That's the reality, okay? Because if there's one group of people that definitely would be tasked with rebuilding Gaza ASAP, it would be Israelis, okay? It's actually mind-boggling how in the same sentence CNN just said, it is now a question of whether Hamas abides by the ceasefire after Hamas said the U.S. will take over Gaza. Am I going insane? Did I hear that wrong? No, you're not going insane. I think this is... It's actually not that complicated at all. When you realize that the people that we are talking about, at least in mainstream outlets, are not seen as real human beings, it becomes much clearer how this kind of propaganda can happen. Palestinians are not considered to be real human beings. They're not considered to be human at all. So, obviously, how to deal with them can be talked about in these ways. There's no other group of people that you could talk like this about. Across the board. That's it.
We'll talk to someone who will talk about how they still have the keys to their family's home in Ashkelon, which is on obviously the Israeli side, who are Palestinians. Like, to imagine the people who live in Gaza are just going to happily, merrily go live in some kind of a permanent refugee camp, like Syrians have been living in.
Okay,
Syria,
great.
Obviously,
they're anti-Trump, so they'll finally cover it truthfully.
The only reason to go back is if they have nowhere else to go. Jim, of course, that's not the reason they want to go back. They want to go back because it's home. So then what does all this actually mean? Does this all just become a whole lot of hot air or not?
Well, listen, apply that principle to any other war or conflict that involves two people fighting over a piece of land. Did George Mitchell suggest moving the Catholics out of Ireland, right? I mean, when you were speaking about South Africa, did you discuss moving all black South Africans out of Africa to solve the issue here. It's preposterous, and it's illegal by any understanding of international law that you would forcibly move people away from their homes.
It's crazy.
The agency here, right, is the agency of the Palestinian people.
Right.
Are they going to be frog marched out of their country by U.S. forces as it's then rebuilt as a Riviera by presumably U.S. property developers? That seems to be what the president. It's not seems to be what the president is suggesting. It is what the president is suggesting in so many words. And I would just say that the thing is with Trump, he seems to be applying this principle, if you want to call it that, to other places as well. He wants Greenland, apply pressure to an ally, in this case, a treaty ally, Denmark, and take ownership, maybe send some money their way, and make it part of the U.S. Same with Panama. Violate a decades-old treaty to take back the Panama Canal. Where is the agency of the nations whose territory is sovereign, right? Much like the Palestinian people in Gaza. It seems to be a Trump worldview here that requires moving people off their land. The other piece I would say, it requires two other countries giving up their land, right? Jordan and Egypt to become new homes for the Palestinian people. And by the way, their leaders have said they have no interest in doing that.
And of course, it was also.
It's not about the leaders, man. It's not about the leaders of Jordan and the leaders of Saudi Arabia. It's never about them. It's never been about them. It's entirely about the Palestinians. And the more we sidestep Palestinians from this conversation, the more October 7 and the conditions for October 7 get primed up.
All of this, and watching the look on Prime Minister Netanyahu's face, I was struck, Jeremy, by the fact that even he, I don't want to use the word giddy, but in a sense, that's the right word.
So much for the protest vote against Kamala just made it worse. This is such a stupid attitude to have because one, there's no inclination that Kamala Harris the only thing that we knew about Kamala Harris was that she was literally doing the same exact thing that Joe Biden was doing, even if it actually harmed her electoral chances. Okay, that's number one. And number two, I maintain the position that Donald Trump was going to be worse than Kamala Harris. You're coming to someone who literally openly recognized that this was going to happen. I warned of this happening. And at the time, Kamala Harris, or at least any liberal that wanted to win, could have been like, yeah, we're going to actually put an end to this. We're going to put a stop to what Joe Biden is doing. And they chose not to. Okay. So saying that like, oh, so much for the protest vote, especially when Kamala Harris lost by wider margins than the people that voted for someone else, is just idiotic. I don't know why liberals often repeat this false notion. It just doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris lost by wider margins than the protest voters that voted for Jill Stein. Even if you were to combine all of the protest voters, okay, even if it is combined, exactly, appreciate Hasan on how shit it is to mock the Gaza voters. Those voters made a rational decision based on what Biden and Harris did, especially if they assumed she was going to lose already, which she was going to do. I can't believe H. Bizzle is saying this. I don't know if you're saying this sarcastically or not. Oh my God. We got the UAW. We got the DNC's very own H. Bizzle even chirping right now. That's crazy. It's true, by the way. I mean, you're 100% correct, H. Bizzle. This is it. Kamala Harris looked at the electoral map, okay? She looked at the electoral map, recognizing the dangers of a Trump administration, and was woefully incompetent in addressing any of the needs that the American public wanted. So no, especially considering that she lost by wider margins than even the protest votes combined, this is an insane statement to advance, regardless of the hypothetical reality where Kamala Harris would not be as bad as Donald Trump, which we have no proof for. And even then, I still maintain that position throughout the entire process. I told you that Donald Trump was going to do exactly this shit over and over and over and over again. Okay? Liberals just go with whatever narrative makes them feel morally superior. I mean, yeah, it's just like, what is insane to me, what is completely and utterly insane to me about all of this is that liberals just choose not to learn any lessons from their failures at all and just want to go back to business as usual politics. Now, they and the party can get away with doing that. But you, as a voter, shouldn't be doing propaganda for an incompetent party when their incompetence has led to Donald Trump's victory. Okay? You are a voter. You're not a Democratic Party consultant. So why are you running defense for their ineptitude? Why are you rewarding them for their ineptitude? It doesn't make sense. This is the second time that the liberals have lost to Donald Trump. Hi, my name is Julia Iaffe. I did not care that Biden facilitated in Gaza, but now that Trump is in office, I suddenly want to act like I care about ethnic cleansing in Gaza. I'm doing it solely to score political points because I'm a proud partisan genocidal ghoul. Yeah. I hope everyone's happy now that they got Joe out of office. Yeah, they went from Joe to Trump. What are we talking about? And it wasn't even just about Gaza. Gaza was a key component of the electoral defeat. Okay, for Kamala Harris, especially in Michigan, sending Richie Torres, sending Bill Clinton out there, doing all this shit was obviously a unimaginably stupid decision. And I know that it was an unimaginably stupid decision because I was there while it was happening, and I kept going, why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? One thing that I must remind people, okay, is that even beyond Gaza, the Kamala Harris campaign was so unimaginably inept, so unqualified to meet the needs of the American public that they lost. The reason why they lost by incredibly wide margins that you couldn't even make up for the protest votes, if all of them combined, the reason why Kamala Harris lost to the couch, and the reason why Kamala Harris lost to people who were just more enthusiastic about voting for Donald Trump, was because they did not address the needs. Okay, Gaza was a big factor in this, but Gaza technically, in terms of the Democratic Party's woeful incompetence and their inability to see the electoral map for what it actually was, is a mere demonstration of their attitude across a broad spectrum of issues. This problem is at the heart of the Democratic Party, okay? It's not just Gaza directly, even though Gaza directly played a formative role in this, but it's more so the attitude that they demonstrated in Gaza, in not dealing with these problems that we were causing, that our administration was responsible for. It actually can translate, that blindness can actually translate to every other issue, whether it be protection for marginalized people, whether it be healthcare, whether it be labor protections, okay? Or even defending some of the good things that the administration had done, defending its own successes. Every part of this process was fundamentally busted, and the proof is in the results. The proof is in the results of this election. It's that simple. You understand what I'm saying? It's not just Gaza. Although Gaza played a major role in this, it's not just Gaza. It's actually a larger spiritual problem within the heart of the Democratic Party. Their inability or outright disinterest in addressing the needs of the broader population. You had hundreds of thousands of people from different walks of life, but especially young people, pour out into the streets on college campuses. And what did the administration do? They said, we're going to combat anti-Semitism. What did they do in the process of combating anti-Semitism? Arrest 3,100 college students. 3,100 college students were arrested. A higher number of arrests than at January 6th. Okay? Think about that. Think about how insane that is. They sent Richie Torres to Michigan. They sent Bill Clinton to Michigan to talk about Judea and Samaria. It was insane. Trump, on the other hand, being a better politician overall, was a better liar. He went to Dearborn. He ate some Palestinian food. You know what I mean? And was like, oh, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix it. That's it. That's all it took. The very fact that the Democrats lost on this issue, the very fact that the Democrats lost on this issue to the Muslim ban guy is insane. Okay? Think about that. How is that possible? It's like the TikTok situation all over again. Donald Trump says he wants to ban TikTok when he's in office. Can't do it. The Democrats now own the ban of TikTok. And then Donald Trump is now seen as the savior of TikTok. How do you f up so hard? It's like, I don't think you can throw this hard if you tried to deliberately throw. I feel like they're carefully designing the American political duopoly in a way where they are like purposely coming across as the most incompetent party imaginable. And a big part of that is also the Democrats' inability to understand that they're supposed to earn your votes. So now, in an effort to do propaganda for that principle that, oh, well, you fucked up, you should have voted for us, this is what they're going to do. They're going to say, oh, I hope you're happy with your protest vote that we didn't even want. We openly said we did not want your vote, and people didn't vote for us, even though the margins were literally larger than the protest votes. Okay, we're still going to act like the protest votes would have mattered, and we're simply going to refuse to address the issues at hand here and keep giving the country away to charlatans who want to pick it apart for scraps and sell it off to private enterprise. I have friends mocking the Gaza voters today, and I'm like, why are you mocking people making a rational decision, especially when his party lost a 32-count convicted felon and doesn't win elections outside the national swing? Nothing these fools scolding the Gaza voters are even doing is impacting the elections. And the fact that this party has parts of its base choosing nihilism over voting for it in the face of fascism shows us that nothing the party is doing is having a positive impact on anyone's lives. We had around 50% of the electorate choose a felon, telling people he would do the fascism. So where does this party get off on mocking anyone? Pack of losers. The other thing that is nuts on it is polling showed that most American Jews believe that what Israel was doing in Gaza was fundamentally wrong. So this kowtowing to donors in Gaza is nuts. Once again, out of touch rich fucks steering American politics completely off the rails. Yeah, there were so many different polls conducted on this. Okay, there were so many different polls conducted on the Gaza issue and the broad reception, okay, of the American voter base. You had 74% of Republicans, or 60% of Republicans, sorry, saying that they want a ceasefire in Gaza. They want to make Israel stop. Think about that. Much larger numbers of independents and almost damn near the entirety of the voter base for the Democratic Party. Okay? This wasn't a secret. This was never a secret. So if you're sitting around saying like, oh, dude, you know, here, you get what you deserve or whatever, then you're basically admitting that you had no care or consideration for the humanity of these people, and you actually kind of like that Donald Trump is doing this violence, because this kind of violence in your mind is punishing your neighbors who made the wrong choice, because all you care about is party. Okay? Party over anything else. Partisanship over anything else, especially ironic considering that if you're not a part of the party structure, then this party doesn't even care about you. It's crazy. So no, I will never support mass deportations, no matter how many Latinos voted for Donald Trump. Okay? Anyway, I mean, here, yeah, this is another glaringly obvious indication of the ineptitude here for Kamala Harris. Chappell Roan comes out during the Grammys and makes a speech. I told myself if I ever won a Grammy and I got to stand up here in front of the most powerful people in music, I would demand that labels in the industry profiting millions of dollars off artists would offer a livable wage in healthcare, especially for developing artists. Labels, we got you, but do you got us, right? To which partisan Olivia Giuliana, the number one defender of the Democratic Party, and perhaps one of the worst propagandists for the Democratic Party, says, if only there had been a presidential candidate who had an entire plan to expand healthcare access. To which Felix replied with, do you think that the candidate might have had a credibility problem with that issue after claiming she supported Medicare for all during her doomed primary bid and then immediately disavowing that in a few dozen very public positions she held? We like to, I guess, like, people just like, it's a very interesting predicament that the Democratic Party's most loyal propagandists also are maintaining the same out of touch, unprincipled stances that the Democratic Party's people in position of power maintain. It's weird. When Olivia Giuliana says stuff like that, she's not saying that to the broader public. She's saying that to people in power within the Democratic Party. She's basically saying, I'm playing ball. Look at me. I'm a loyal servant to you. Okay? It's very interesting. The Republicans don't work in that same way. Okay? They don't. If your call to action as a party year over year is always going to be, hey, vote for us or else the other side is worse, over and over again, making harm reduction arguments over and over again, okay, although harm reduction is theoretically correct, Americans demonstrably do not move in that direction. They do not make a decision based off of harm reduction. They've shown that time and time again. They've shown that specifically with Donald Trump, as a matter of fact. What will it take for the Democrats to wake up to the reality that you have to sell people on voting for you? Okay? I don't understand it. They get this in every other facet of existence, okay? They understand it. Americans are so capitalist brain that they understand this concept on marketing and its importance when it comes to purchasing commodities, right? There's no world in which you could be like, well, buy us because the alternative is so much worse. It's stupid. You can't constantly go back on your first principles and then expect the American public to not look at that and go, well, you guys are hypocrites then. You can't say Donald Trump is Hitler and then turn around and shake hands with him. You can't say Donald Trump's border policy is racist and then turn around and advocate for that same border policy while simultaneously saying Donald Trump is actually playing the role of a hurdle in front of reasonable border policy that we want to implement. You can't do that, because when you do that, people look at that and go, oh, so you're admitting that that was a problem and you were just lying to us 8 years ago. Either you're lying to us now or you were lying to us 8 years ago when you said this was racist. Okay? It's a terrible situation to be in. Like, on its simplest terms, I'm not even talking about like the impact of the policy at this point. I'm simply talking about how this reads when you go back, when you flip-flop like this on a number of different issues. Like, and the Democrats have consistently done this. It's kind of crazy. They've done this on virtually everything. They've done this on defunding the police, dude. The Democrats were like, Republicans want to defund the police. Not a single voter believed that. What do you mean the Republicans don't work in the same way? Is this not what Trumpism was all about? Did they not have people on Fox News speaking directly to Trump or Trumpism? No. The people on Fox News are communicating the desires of the broader public to Trump, at least when the election is happening. They are talking to Trump directly, but they're actually talking to Trump directly to communicate the desires of the broader public to Trump. Republicans are afraid of their base. Democrats run away from their base. The Democrats disdain their base. Do you understand? This is a key issue here. And there's obviously some structural reasons as to why this is permissible for the Republican Party, whereas not allowed for the Democrats. One of the key issues here, of course, is that the Democratic Party, at least on the aesthetic front, is advocating for anti-capitalist measures, right? Things that harm the bottom line of corporations. And if both parties are completely captive to corporate interests, then yeah, it's going to be much more difficult for the Democrats to push forward a comprehensive agenda that will undermine corporate profit, okay? Democrats can't get away with giving into the needs of their base of support, because the base of support's needs are healthcare. We're talking about the eradication of a massive multi-billion, if not trillion-dollar sector here, if we're talking about for-profit healthcare, right? But Republicans can obviously give their base all the red meat that they want, because their base is demanding things that do not disrupt the existing hierarchy. Shitting on marginalized people, whether they be trans or undocumented migrants, is not disruptive to the pre-existing hierarchy, because it's technically not disruptive to capital. It's technically not disruptive to capitalism. Okay? There are exceptions to this, of course, when, someone is really, really invested in doing fascism. And we're nearing that disruptive cycle right now with Donald Trump pushing for tariffs, and then also Donald Trump pushing for mass deportation of all undocumented migrants. Tariffs are disruptive to capitalism law? No, I understand. That's why I mentioned it. And guess what? They didn't actually get implemented. They did a pause on it. And the tariffs were not even for... Wait, no, what do you mean? Uh-oh. I'm not yelling at you or anything. I'm saying, yeah, I recognize that. But do those ideas come from the base itself or those on high? No, of course not. Everything that Donald Trump does is for the base itself. But all the culture war shit that he pursues is for the base. Donald Trump is also... Take the trans issue, okay? This is a minuscule percentage of the population, totally marginal, utterly irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, right? In terms of like what the government is supposed to do. And yet they get talked about endlessly. Okay? Why do they get talked about endlessly? They're portrayed as villains. They're portrayed as contributing to the moral degeneracy of Western civilization. In the same vein that Nazis also said the exact same thing about trans people and gay people in general. But the reason why they use that as an issue is because it's not disruptive to capital. Okay? It's a great way to shift your attention back to a group of people that are vulnerable and have no serious mechanism of pushback, no legal recourse, no massive lobby, no way to actually actively fight back when the government decides you don't exist anymore. Okay? Same goes for undocumented migrants. And the point I'm making here is that Trump can so easily turn that conversation and reshift his priorities to trans people or undocumented migrants that way. And it's something that he has volunteered before, that Donald Trump has personally stated, and I still remember, in front of a massive crowd, I think it was at like CPAC or something. It wasn't at CPAC, but Donald Trump literally was like, I used to talk about all these different things, and you don't cheer as much as you do when I talk about trans people. Donald Trump himself was pro-trans in 2016 when he ran, played a major role in him coming across as a moderate voice to the broader electorate, something that people forget, okay? By 2024, Donald Trump was obviously vehemently anti-trans. That transition happened because this was something that he thought was an adequate way to reshift the priorities of the base and give them some red meat, per se. Do you understand? He was never pro-trans. He just pretended. Yeah, no shit. He doesn't care. He's a rich guy. My point is, he's a rich asshole. Of course he doesn't care about any of the issues that he talks about. What are you talking about? The only thing he cares about is advancing his own wealth, gaining more power. That's the only thing he cares about.
Palestinians have a bunch of different possibilities right now, Lindsay.
All right, Perry Russum for us. Thanks so much. Let's bring in ABC News contributor and former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East.
Yes, appealing to racism and bigotry is the name of the game, chatters. Yes.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu expected that Trump would announce today that the U.S. would take over Gaza?
So, Lindsay, we don't know. He did look somewhat surprised, but they did have a pre-meeting with Steve Witkoff yesterday before this meeting. So I would assume that this topic would...
The trans issue, even against Kamala Harris, is not even about trans people itself. It was that Kamala Harris would rather care about the silly shit than help you, okay? That's why it was effective. Anti-trans sentiment on its own is not broadly popular. Anti-trans sentiment needs to be packaged in a way where Americans, other things that Americans care about, have to be harmed somehow, okay? And this is something that I have repeated over and over again, and is shown in the internal focus groups that the Family Matters and all these other like right-wing Christian fascist think tanks have put together. If you just say trans people, they're mentally ill, people look at you and go, ew, dude, chill out. But if you say trans people because they're unfair, they're getting an unfair advantage in sports, they go, yes, I agree. Okay?
Be a substantial undertaking, and it's very difficult to see how it would actually occur.
With regard to Trump saying that he would like to see the U.S. take ownership position in Gaza, just in terms of cost and time, what would it take to rebuild Gaza?
I've seen estimations that it would take anywhere but 10 to 15 years and cost anywhere between $50 to $65 billion. And that's just basic reconstruction. A lot of that would be, of course, dismantling and removing the tons and tons of rubble that has been caused by this conflict. So it'd go potentially 15 years to even get to a place where people could move in and live there if they were doing a complete demolition and then a reconstruction of a 25-mile long strip of land.
All right, Nick Mulroy, so appreciate your time as always. Thank you. One of President Trump's nominees was just confirmed. Pam Bondi will serve as Attorney General after a 54-46 vote. Senator Fetterman was the only Democrat to vote yes. Meanwhile, two controversial nominees cleared the first hurdle. Secretary of Health and Human Services nominee Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Director of National Intelligence nominee Tulsi Gabbard advancing out of committee on party line votes. Here's ABC's senior political correspondent Rachel Scott.
Tonight, two of the president's most controversial nominees clearing key hurdles, on track for confirmation, as skeptical Republican senators fall in line. Health Secretary nominee Robert F. Kennedy Jr. winning approval of the Finance Committee after the lone Republican holdout, Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, who is also a doctor, voted yes.
Mr. Cassidy. Mr. Cassidy, aye.
Cassidy had grilled Kennedy over his years of spreading misinformation about vaccines. The senator acknowledged he was struggling with the nomination. But ultimately, Cassidy, who is facing re-election next year, fully aware of the pressure he could face for voting no, now giving Kennedy his full support.
Ultimately restoring
trust. It's so difficult for him, dude. It was so difficult for him. He really had a crisis. He really had an internal crisis, but of course, unsurprisingly, as many Republicans have done time and time again,
Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad and her refusal to call Edward Snowden a traitor. Gabbard and Kennedy, two disruptors in a team of them. The leading figure, billionaire Elon Musk, who is out to reshape the government itself. His Department of Government Efficiency, staffed largely by young engineers, at least one of them just 19, have brought beds into their government offices. Musk posting on X, working the weekend is a superpower. His team getting access to the Treasury Department's payment system, which processes trillions of dollars of the government's bills and includes the personal information of millions of Americans. Musk then seizing control of USAID, which provides humanitarian assistance around the world, helping an estimated 32 million children suffering malnutrition and bringing food, water, shelter, and health care to victims of natural disasters. USAID's $43 billion budget is a tiny fraction of what the government spends, about 1%. But Musk, who is the world's richest man, posting, "We spent the weekend feeding USAID into the wood chipper." And tonight, sources tell ABC News that the State Department is now starting to evacuate all USAID staff who are on foreign assignments worldwide, some 1,500 to 2,000 people. The goal is to bring all those workers and their families back to the United States by this weekend.
I'm telling you right now, their goal with the USAID thing is to just like centralize the control and take out the remaining parts of USAID that was actually good and turn it into a pure mechanism for evil. Okay, there is no world in which these guys go, "Oh, actually, we're done interfering in the affairs of other countries." That's it. Not recognizing that the reason for USAID engaging in these sorts of endeavors that are actually offering medical aid to people that need it, okay, is precisely because it serves a higher purpose, soft power. Any vote for the occupation of Gaza will fail in the Senate. This is a non-starter. What happened to the anti-war president? 30 Dem no's max. Yeah, I think this is delusional. I think Ruben Gallego is out of his mind if he thinks that the Democratic Party will unite. First of all, Featherman's a definite yes. Okay. I have news for you. We aren't taking over Gaza, but the media and the chattering class will focus on it for a few days, but Trump will succeed in distracting everyone from the real story. The billionaires using government to steal from regular people. No, they're going to do it, I think. I don't know why Chris Murphy is saying they're not going to do it. Also, there is no anti-war party. That's it. There is no anti-war party. The Democrats are certainly not the anti-war party. I 100% agree with that. Across the entire federal government, they want to reshape every agency to their own interests. Someone like Rubio recognizes the weapon that USAID can be. And this is what they mean when they say they will return the agency to its core mission. Yeah, I think they're like, cut it with this like DEI soft power shit. Okay, we're not doing that anymore. Not realizing that like that plays a role. Republicans are so funny because they just like fail to comprehend. They fall for their own propaganda sometimes. There is a attitude brewing in the third world, okay, in the global south, and people are going to get very mad at me for saying this. So gear up for it. But there is an attitude in a lot of parts of the world that America has actively destabilized, that all this gay shit, okay, which I 100% obviously agree with, you know, I do a bunch of gay shit myself, is seen as like Western interference, okay? People develop a disdain for it because they see it as like USAID-backed Western interference and Western influence. There's already a fundamentalist principle out there to begin with in many of these countries, because that's what happens when your country is destabilized, okay? And the only people that are seen as like devoid of any sort of Western intervention and Western interference are the fundamentalists. Iran is a great case study for this, obviously. So is Afghanistan, but definitely Iran more so than anyone else. So many of these countries where like USAID operates, look at a lot of the you know initiatives that America is doing in terms of like building up civil society organizations and things like that as Western interference, as like Western influence coming into the country and seeking out mechanisms of destabilization. Whether it's correct or not does not matter. This is just the way people view it, okay? If you are a gay person or a trans person living in these countries, you also will seek out the help of these institutions, understandably so, civil society organizations and whatnot, okay? So then there's even more disdain for gay and trans people. That disdain already existed. Make no mistake. I'm not saying that these guys like learned to be homophobic because of American intervention or whatever, okay? There's certainly plenty of it already, and it's absolutely represented by the ruling class in these countries, okay? But this gives them propaganda fodder to say, oh, look at all these NGOs, look at all these civil society organizations, all this gay shit is happening because they want the CIA and Western influence to destabilize the country, okay? Also, it's not that all that USAID does, like the social media they treated, not like that's all USAID does, like the social media they created in Cuba. Yes, USAID also plays a role alongside the CIA in destabilizing countries directly. Absolutely. In Iran, they have a term, Garbzadegi, roughly translated to the Westernification for this USAID gay regime change stuff. Now, the irony is, if you want to destabilize a country, if you want to destabilize a country and you set up civil society organizations, okay, that talk about like promoting DEI or talk about like, you know, helping gay people, then that does actually play a role in beefing up the legitimacy of American intervention. That's why for liberals, at least, that's why for liberals here in America, they constantly bring up the horrible treatment of gay people and trans people in these countries, or the horrible treatment of women in these countries, right? Do you understand what I'm saying? We're spreading freedom in these nations. We're helping improve the lives of women in these nations. A big part of the Afghan withdrawal and the broad negative reception from American media at the time of Joe Biden's Afghanistan withdrawal was, look at all these women that we're harming by destabilizing the green zone, by basically abolishing the green zone in Kabul. Like, it's over. Now Afghan women are going to be dominated. And it's true, they are. Right? But the adequate way to maintain feminism in Afghanistan, or try to build up feminism or a feminist movement in Afghanistan, is not by bombing Afghanistan for years and years, allowing the Taliban to basically grow back in its power and influence and prominence as the sole people that are fighting back against American occupiers, and then giving the country back to them. Wait, this motherfucker changed the third time? Yes. This chatter says, I'm from Egypt now, living abroad. A big portion of my family believe that gay representation in Hollywood is a part of U.S. intervention. There's U.S. intervention, but the anger is misplaced towards other marginalized groups. It's messed up. Definitely compounds on pre-existing conservative values. Exactly. It gives conservatives, which exist in other countries as well, lo and behold, more opportunity to propagandize. I know this from Turkey. That's it. They always say you're a servant of the British or you're a servant of America in Turkey. Ironically enough, Erdogan is the biggest servant of American empire, but that's besides the point. They say you're a servant of American empire because you're doing gay propaganda. Okay.
He has a lot of confidence, and he thinks that because he's American, it's the U.S., he can do whatever he wants. He's been able to a lot of the times, but what he doesn't realize is that he doesn't have one thing.
This dude is a Hasan head for sure.
That is that they have their faith, and that they know that no matter what happens, that they have that to back them up. And as it says in the Quran, anybody can plan. They plan. Trump plans. Everybody plans. But Allah always also plans, and nobody's a better planner than Allah.
How would you describe currently how this crowd is feeling? I noticed that since this last hour that there's really been more outrage pouring out of you guys.
Pissed off. I mean, there's a war criminal on our soil. There's a war criminal where we live. Right, like I live 15 minutes from here. It's maddening, obviously, and there's no other reaction other than like, hey, this guy needs to leave. This guy needs to be in prison. That's like the best thing that can happen to him. That he needs.
You know what's funny about the Egyptian conservatives, Egyptian conservative parents of that chatter, and another chatter pointed this out. But we say this about Hollywood in America too, because there is a hog universality. This is what I always mention. Hog universality. It exists. People need to recognize it.
But I mean, it's our job to make sure that we're on the right side of history, and that at the very least we focus on the things that matter to us, that resonate with us, so that in all the evil that's surrounding the world, that we can at least show up for things that.
This is for all the liberals gloating. Uncommitted's Layla El Abed. For months, we warned about the dangers of Trump. Our calls largely went unheard. Harris left a vacuum by not visiting Michigan families impacted by U.S. bombs. Democrats had a chance to persuade voters they were the better alternative, and they blew it. I feel sad and angry and scared for our communities. For months, we warned about the dangers of Trump at home. Okay? Harris left the vacuum by not visiting Michigan families impacted by U.S. supply bombs to help create a permission structure for their trust, while Trump visited Dearborn and filled the community in despair with lies. Trump's illegal calls for ethnic cleansing are horrific. But as on so many other issues, Democrats had a chance to persuade voters they were the better alternative, and they blew it. Okay? And that's precisely what's happening here. That's precisely what happened. And anyone that tries to tell you, like, oh, dude, these guys are stupid. Okay? Like others care. Lol, you're dumb to think that the left cares. I don't even know what you're talking about. This is so vague. Every single voter, no matter how stupid, can still recognize when the party actively is saying, we don't want you. And the Democrats communicated only that. Okay? Maybe because of the shame that they felt in their hearts, if they're capable of feeling shame because they were literally killing their immediate family members, or whether because they just simply did not care and foolishly thought they could win by creating a neocon Liz Cheney coalition, or whether it was because they wanted to lose, because they don't care if Donald Trump wins, because Donald Trump will advance the agenda of American empire, and they'll be able to sit there and collect money from campaign contributions by pointing to all the awfulness that Donald Trump is contributing to American existence. Okay? Are the progressives regretting staying at home on election day yet? I don't think you understand. The people in this community are not the people that you should be trying to talk to. Okay? This is a community that is incredibly active in politics, in American politics, and incredibly tuned into American politics. This is a community where many people voted for Kamala Harris in spite of their better judgment. Shut the up. Stop imagining a progressive left that didn't go out and vote. You know who doesn't vote? Most normal people who don't hear anything from their party about improving their lives, not just on Gaza, by the way. It's all the Democrats' fault, right? We told everyone who Donald Trump was. They still voted for a criminal. This is such an idiotic conversation to have over and over and over again. And this is the reason why Democrats lose. This attitude that the Democratic Party is entitled to the votes of Americans, no matter how inept they are, is literally why they keep losing. And I keep yelling about this over and over again, as I did throughout the entire election cycle. And virtually every single person that came in here and said, Hasan, wow, it seems like you're negatively impacting the Democratic Party's turnout by saying that they should listen to the needs of the masses and communicate actively in how they can improve the needs of the masses, and separate themselves from Joe Biden, for example, because he's historically unpopular and old and decrepit. Okay? That argument was correct. Live with your choice. I'm happy Trump got elected. Reap what you sow. Well, there it is. Okay? This is the reality. Reap what you sow. I'm happy Trump got elected. Reap what you sow is exactly the problem here. The only people that actually maintain this position are people who don't care about these issues aside from making their team win, because you are most likely a wealthy, elitist, entitled, bicoastal liberal who's not going to be impacted by Donald Trump's decisions. So you have the safety and security to say, well, my team lost, so you. I'm happy that Donald Trump is being violent. That is the issue at heart here. I care about the issues. I care about the people that are impacted. I don't want the Democratic Party to advocate as a lighter version of the Republican Party. I don't want the Democratic Party to be the diet Republican Party. I want the Democratic Party to be an anti-fascist party. I want the Democratic Party to be a party that actually works to help American people, okay, to do what is right. But unfortunately, the Democrats misjudge their base of support. They think it's people like that. It's people that just have partisan loyalty for no reason other than the fact that they just want, their party to win, and spite-based politics. They think that that is the base. That is not the base. Go yell at some Republicans, dumbass. Why are you openly admitting that you like that Donald Trump is going to be violent and awful? Anyway, and it's crazy. And it's crazy because right now, that ineptitude, that incompetence is the reason why the Dems aren't even playing the role of obstructionists adequately. They've just completely given up. They've shown their bellies, okay? And these guys are infinitely more predisposed with shitting on some imagined leftist movement that could have carried Kamala Harris across the finish line when the evidence suggests that it would not have. Okay? Will Menaker said it best years ago when he said, there are a lot of liberals who actually want the Republicans to do this cruelty. They either don't care about the cruelty or actually want it, but they can't get themselves to openly admit that they want this awfulness to happen. They want the moral superiority of voting for the opposing party while simultaneously demanding that the Republicans be as violent and as vicious. They carry the same level, they say the same kinds of resentment. But when the Republicans do it, they can sit there and say, oh, I hate that the Republicans are doing this. That liberal, on the other hand, openly admitted that he likes that the Republicans are doing this.
Is going to be asked about this. Trust me, as I told you, two European ambassadors in the last segment on my phone. I'm up to 3 now, and plus the members of Congress. But no Republican will say it publicly yet. It'll be interesting. Watch the Republicans publicly. Remember, George W. Bush had that humble foreign policy. Can the United States say, I want the Panama Canal back, I want Greenland, now I want Gaza? And beyond that, John.
Here, this is a perfect, here.
Like
This is one of the best takes from Will Menaker that was posted on Post Left Watch.
Evil thing, like for instance, like if you're a liberal Zionist, you have to be against the West Bank settlements, and then like as long as Netanyahu's in charge, those are never going to stop, and in fact, they're going to intensify. I think you see a similar dynamic here in Democrats when they're confronted with the fact that Arab Americans or Muslim Americans are maybe withholding their vote from Joe Biden, and you see how immediately the Seldowitz jumps out of them.
Yes,
they're like,
yes.
enjoy being in a camp. And I think for the liberals, they need to have a bad right-wing guy carrying this out so they can displace.
Louder? Is it not loud? Or is it too loud?
Sort of displace onto that figure the evil things that they secretly want to take place.
Absolutely.
Like threatening, like for Democrats to be threatening Muslim Americans with deportation under Trump, wink, wink, is just like they just want Trump to do that for them so they can say, oh, we didn't actually do that. We support Muslims.
Absolutely.
But as soon as they become inconvenient, like for instance, like whether they are voicing a political opinion in America as citizens of this country, or inconvenient in terms of like they live in a part of the world that Israel thinks is theirs, that their lives are forfeit. And they don't want to hear anything about it.
Arabs and Muslims, like more general.
Your lack of acknowledgement of a group of people, specifically the 92% that some of us are just tired of fighting for people who don't give a fuck about us, is annoying. I do believe that the Dems lost it themselves. Maybe, just maybe, though, this attitude comes from being exhausted from fighting other people's battles when they clearly didn't give a fuck about mine. What? I don't even know what you're talking about, dude. Use words. Okay? What? Why are you admitting to being nihilistic and thinking that advocacy is transactional? I don't know who you're shadowboxing in this chat, but if your overall principle here is that advocacy must be transactional, you're wrong. Okay? As a rich white dude, I am technically untouched, with the exception of obviously immigration related things or denaturalization potentially, and also I guess Islamophobia. But outside of those two things, I'm virtually untouched by a lot of the things that I advocate for. Okay, I'm not trans. Why am I advocating for trans issues? I'm not black. Why am I advocating for black issues? I can pay for healthcare. Why do I want universal healthcare? What do you mean? Oh, I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted for always showing up for others if they don't show up for me. It's ridiculous. Yes, you do. What? Being a leftist is not about because someone is paying you to act this way. No. Wait, what? Someone is paying me to act this way? What you mean you? You know who pays me? You do, dumbass. What are you talking about? You subscribe for $6 or for free with a Twitch Prime. That's it. This is a TikTok argument, lol. Yeah, I don't really understand what the that argument is. I think it's a very stupid argument. Anything that undermines solidarity, especially in this time, is so stupid. I don't even run ads no more, and people are like, you're being paid to say this. If I was a mercenary, a gun for hire, and this wasn't actually my genuinely held convictions that I'm demonstrating over and over again, why in the ever-loving would I ever criticize Israel, for example? Are you stupid? You don't have to be particularly charismatic or even knowledgeable in terms of like doing advocacy purely for money. I would just take a liberal Zionist position at the very least, or a pro-Zionist position if I really wanted to get in on the fun. If I was a grifter, who the grifts to the left is the most annoying group of people on the planet? You're virtue signaling. Well, thank you for demonstrating that my worldview is a virtue. My worldview is a virtuous one. We all know why. It's because you would lose the majority of our audience if you didn't. No, brother. It is incredibly easy to grift to the right. Okay? Many people do it. You probably watch a bunch of those dumbasses and like what they have to say. Okay? I expect you will be harshly targeted soon, and the coverage of Gaza and other things will be fought with censorship if they're willing to deport Americans for shutting the free media. Yes. I worry about that for sure. Frost Rarely, thank you for the 10 gifted subs. When people say virtue signaling, I take it as a compliment. I take it in the same exact way that people suspect me of doing like steroids or something. Okay? I clearly don't, but that means that you think, you know, I'll put some decent amount of work in here, that you think that I was like medically enhanced. So great. I love that. When you say virtue signaling, that means you are recognizing that my advocacy is virtuous, that there is virtue in the things that I'm advocating for, even if you disagree with it and you think I'm doing it cynically. So awesome. Thank you. I'm not doing it cynically, but that's great that you at least recognize that this is the correct position to have. So why don't you also try to understand why this is the correct position to have? Because clearly you believe it. Deep down inside, there's something in there, okay? Deep down inside, there's something in there that says, well, this seemingly is the right position, the morally correct position. Oh, you just want to be on the right side of history. Okay, well, it takes $0 for you to be on the right side of history, too. Future Bureau. Goddamn. Thank you for the 25 get the subs. And His Malted Majesty, thank you for the 20 gift the sub. He taking clip. This is basically the worldview of every liberal. They think everything is virtue signaling and are on the timeline and crashing out right now, acting like they give a fuck about Gaza before Trump got in office. I'm so tired of this shit, man. They only care about it to spit in the faces of people who didn't fall in line. The team sport shit is insane. Yeah, except the team isn't even giving you anything. Like, Democrats act like they care about the difference in administration between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, but then they say it's actually good. You're going to fuck around and find out. You're going to learn today what it's like when you don't vote for the Democratic Party. Oh, so you don't care about the difference in administration between the Republicans and the Democrats at all then? Because if you did, you wouldn't even be going, even for a moment, you wouldn't be going, oh, well, f around and find out. You'd immediately be going, this is completely unacceptable, and we have to put an end to it immediately. Not taking advantage of the violence and the cruelty itself. That's it. Yeah. Also, coming in here and saying like all this shit when my position that is demonstrably unpopular in mainstream media, my position on Israel that is demonstrably unpopular in mainstream media, at least until now, until Trump came into office, and demonstrably unpopular by organizations and institutions that have led to a year-long harassment campaign and the worst, most bad faith smears that I've ever encountered in my entire political career by institutions that also have like some semblance of legitimacy in mainstream public, like the ADL, in spite of the glaringly obvious reality that I've spent the past decade targeting and combating anti-Semitism, is a clear-cut indication that this kind of attitude, this kind of sentiment is not done for a pure grift, okay? It's infinitely easier to grift to the right. Everybody understands that. If you're even remotely liberal, I think you recognize that. I could just be sitting up here talking about how titties are getting smaller in video games and get a much larger audience, as a matter of fact, who never question anything that I say. The reason why I advocate for these things is because I believe in them. That might be very hard for you to comprehend.
Everyone who didn't vote for
but the only thing you're demonstrating in that situation is your own cynical, nihilistic attitude, your own incredibly self-interested opinion that you can never advocate for something bigger than yourself, that you can never actually push for people, that you can never advocate for causes that don't impact you directly. That's all you're saying. That's all you're saying to me, and I hope everyone else can also understand that as well. Yeah, remember when XQC said that it was weird that I was always on the right side? I do remember that.
Kamala Harris because of Palestine. Are you happy now
is a sentiment that I keep hearing from no doubt well-meaning but ultimately mistaken people on the left who do not seem to understand that Kamala Harris did not lose because of Gaza. I need to be abundantly clear about this. Objectively, had every single person who voted for Joe Biden in 2020 also voted for Kamala Harris in 2024, she would have still lost. People don't seem to realize this, so let's go over some numbers real quick. Nevada, Joe Biden got roughly 32% of those eligible to vote to turn out to vote for him, whereas Trump got 33%, so he would have still won. Again, it's very close, but Donald Trump still got a higher percentage of eligible voters to turn out to vote for him. In Pennsylvania, Joe Biden got just under 35% of the state to vote for him, whereas Trump got 36%. In Wisconsin, not only does Biden get a smaller portion of the state than Trump, but he also gets a smaller portion of the state than Harris. Every single person that voted for Joe Biden in 2020 also voted for Kamala Harris in Arizona, she would have still lost Arizona because Trump got a larger portion of the state to vote for him than Joe Biden did. In 2024, Trump got a higher percentage of the state than 2020 Biden did in Georgia and in North Carolina as well. Meaning not only would he have still won, he would have still won every single swing state. Not when you look at this by number, but when you take into account any changes in population. You might be like, wait a minute, didn't Joe Biden get like 81 million votes? So how is he also losing to Trump? Because we have a dumb thing in this country called the Electoral College. It doesn't really matter how many votes Kamala Harris lost, it just matters where those votes came from. Kamala Harris lost votes not in the swing states, but in places like California. She lost 2 million votes. New York, she lost 600,000 votes. Texas, she lost 500,000 votes. Illinois.
By the way, I told you California was going to be devastating, didn't I?
Also lost 500,000 votes. Yes, had she got the exact same 81 million votes, Kamala Harris would have still lost. This isn't like 2016 where Donald Trump just happened to win because nobody turned out to vote. This is a case where Donald Trump won because a lot of people wanted to give him a second chance. He even outperforms 2008 Barack Obama in states like Pennsylvania. Doesn't mean I don't understand those people's anger and frustration. I do, but we need to be honest about why we lost here. We did not lose because of Gaza or because of people protest voting. We lost because of Trump.
The statistics might be a little off. Well, I missed it. Yeah, the grift is almost too easy going hog. Lindy Lee, Queen of Libs, now on Newsmax as a super guest, and got 100,000 followers after Elon Musk retweeted her. Lindy Lee, famous anti-Bernie bro Democrat. You can always figure out someone's career trajectory by looking at stuff like that. Is there proof that Gaza played a significant role in the election? I mean, yeah, there were numerous studies conducted. A chatter in here compiled 36 of them into one website. If you want to check out that link, that showed that the Democratic Party would get like a 6% swing in certain states if they were to actually change trajectory on Gaza, or at least communicate that they're interested in changing trajectory in Gaza. New statement from the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. President Donald Trump, in his arrogance, has placed our people in the Gaza Strip before a single choice: displacement. He should remember that 15 months of relentless bombing with 80,000 tons of American weaponry failed to displace them. Does he now imagine that deceptive racist statements wrapped in false humanity will achieve what bombs could not? Our Palestinian people have always had the option of resistance, a path they pursued for over a century before Trump and after him. Indeed, it is a jihad of victory or martyrdom. By the way, again, if you look at the situation even before this statement, logically, and you recognize that a shit ton of bombing has not actually broken the will of the Palestinian population, this isn't to say that there aren't people that would gladly leave the Gaza Strip. Okay? There are plenty of people who would. But if you think that there are not going to be a ginormous amount of people who refuse to leave for understandable reasons, you're delusional. Saudi foreign minister just put out a statement saying their demand for a Palestinian state is non-negotiable. Yeah, it's self-preservation from the Palestinian, it's self-preservation from the Saudi side too. And a lot of people don't recognize that. They just simply don't understand it. Let's see what Mearsheimer has to say.
Has failed. And this tells you that the Palestinians have no intention of leaving. And the Jordanians and the Egyptians who would, in Trump's scheme, take in these Palestinians have made it unequivocally clear that this is unacceptable. So I don't see how this is going to happen, which from my point of view is all for the good, because as I said, I find this morally reprehensible.
I'm wondering about Jordan and Egypt, who are also important, essential regional allies and partners of the United States. And do we reach a point where Donald Trump is just super tough with our best friends, frankly, in the region? And you see a reversal potentially on issues about relocating Palestinians from Gaza.
It is possible. There's no question that the United States acts as a bully on the world stage. And that's especially true with regard to President Trump. He has very powerful tendencies to act like a bully. And there's no question that sometimes works. It has significant costs, however, because states oftentimes don't cooperate with you. And the question is, will the Egyptians and the Jordanians break when Trump puts pressure on them? I think they will not. And I think they will not because they understand they run the risk of being overthrown by their populations. If they decided to cooperate with the ethnic cleansing of Gaza, it would cause them huge problems at home. And I don't think they want to run that risk. Furthermore, even if they do agree, you still have to drive the Palestinians out. And there's no evidence that the Palestinians are willing to participate voluntarily in a third Nakba.
I'm interested in whether you think some of the fundamental alliances that America has in the world, like with Japan, like with NATO.
What's up? Marge is here. Mersheimer is a Hasan Abihead. You're insane, chatter. Let me turn off the... Oh, wait, laptop camera. Boom, boom. Switching over. Okay. You're good to unplug. This is a very March fit. You like it? If it's not black and white, but, it's not black. I feel like you'd be wearing an all-black fit. Tunnels is strong if in the forest of Vietnam. Wait, what?
You're committed to shutting down the war in Ukraine. You have to work closely with your European allies. And again, slapping them around doesn't solve the problem. It just exacerbates the problem of shutting down the Ukraine war. And with regard to Canada and Mexico, they are our neighbors. We have a vested interest in having good relations with them. We have a lot of coercive leverage over them because we're really powerful. But humiliating them at the same time we're trying to get our way is not the way I would bargain or deal with either Canada or Mexico.
If China is the big challenge, and you're like trying to onshore and reshore manufacturing back to America, bring back capacity, or look at friendshoring, don't you need friends for friendshoring?
Yeah, you absolutely do. I'm a realist par excellence, Steve. And as a good realist, I emphasize hard power.
Right.
But I'm smart enough to understand that hard power alone doesn't make for a good foreign policy. You also need soft power. You need diplomacy. You need to have an ideology that other countries find to be friendly. It's an ideology that other countries respect. And that's why the United States used to emphasize so strongly that it was a liberal democracy and that other countries should emulate us and see us as the city on the hill. This was all part of our soft power approach to dealing with the world. Now, again, I believe hard power is more important than soft power, but you need soft power. And what the Trump administration appears to be doing at this point in time is taking the soft power approach and throwing it in the garbage and thinking that we can rely exclusively on hard power. We can run around the world using the fact that we have a big stick to bully all sorts of countries to do what we want them to do.
You actually sound like this guy. And I don't even agree with his worldview, by the way.
Especially in a world where you need allies.
Let me ask you for a moment about one of the other major players in the world, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, who in my book seems to be on a roll. He came in, he was in office, looked like he was up, dealing with legal problems and legal challenges. October 7th happened. And when you kind of take a step back, even though you can say Israel had one of the biggest intelligence failures of its history on October 7th, when you look since, you see the pagers and walkie-talkies blown up. You see the Hezbollah network essentially blown up. You see Hezbollah and Hamas leadership decimated, assassinated inside Iran. And you see the fall of Bashar al-Assad in Syria because of the lack of support of some of his allies like Iran and Russia. And when you look at that and the way in which the Middle East terrain has changed for Netanyahu, would you agree with me that Netanyahu is on a bit of a roll right now?
No, I think you're dead wrong. I think you've been listening too much to Israeli propaganda and Israel lobby propaganda. First of all, let's talk about Gaza.
Al Jazeera is
the
crazy.
Israelis lost in Gaza. They were supposed to destroy Hamas, right? They weren't going to leave. They were going to ethnically cleanse at least northern Gaza. They were going to remain on the Philadelphia line, which separates Egypt from Gaza. They've given up on all of those things. They admit that Hamas is a lie.
Truth nuke. Truth nuke from Mersheimer. Okay, how am I supposed to have any faith in mental capacity? Well, at this stage in the process, you're supposed to have faith by remembering that what we're going to be doing right now is actually go and learn a Japanese dance. Miss Giff and myself are going to be heading to a studio, and we are going to learn yet another dance today. This time not twerking, but this time specifically pare pare. Is that how you say it? I'm putting Miss Giff through another humiliation ritual. Yes. Para para. Yeah. I'm still going to be absolutely destroyed, obviously. Miss Giff's probably going to defeat me. That's a pin from the Communist Party headquarters. Damn, that's a sick drawing, man. You did a great job. Awesome, because you ain't got no ass. That's crazy. And then if we have time, I mean, we're definitely going to eat the fruits afterwards. But if we have time after that, we might actually go and buy Miss Giff a fit. I wanna make him dress nice again. Get him a second fit. All right. Anyway, we're moving
on. The
on.
International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants against both Netanyahu and his former defense minister,
Here, I'll
Yoav
flip it.
Gallant.
I'm gonna flip
This
the
is
camera.
a huge moral stain on Israel's reputation that will not go away. And indeed, in my opinion, will get only worse with the passage of time once people have a chance to reflect
very
and
cold
write
today,
books
by the way.
and write articles and
Your heat
produce
tech might not help you
documentaries
today.
on what's happened in Gaza. So if you look around at the situation that Israel is in today, and in particular the situation that Netanyahu is in today, he is in
the main
deep
ingest is
trouble, as
offline
is
still.
that country.
This is why it's so great to have you on the show, John. Make sure we get all the the frames right. But Prime Minister Netanyahu is coming to Washington soon, and will be meeting President Trump. What do you think Trump should tell him?
Trump ought to tell him the basic facts of life, which is that Israel is in trouble and that Israel needs to get out of this problem with the Palestinians that's been facing for decades, and that the only way to do that is to reach some sort of political accommodation with the Palestinians. I mean, the one really positive aspect of Donald Trump, which separates him from most American foreign policymakers, especially people like Joe Biden, is that Trump is not a warmonger. Trump is not interested in fighting wars. Trump is much more interested in diplomacy and political settlements, not war. And the Israelis, on the other hand, don't really believe in diplomacy or trying to work out a political settlement with the Palestinians. They believe in big stick diplomacy, what they call the iron wall. What they think they can do is beat the living daylights out of the Palestinians and get them to submit. This hasn't worked. And it's not going to work in the future. And what Trump should tell Netanyahu, and this is what I mean when I'm talking about the basic facts of life, that there are real limits to what you can do with military power. And in situations like the one that you face with regard to the Palestinians, the only solution is a political solution, not a military solution.
One of the achievements of the last Trump administration that President Trump talks a lot about are the Abraham Accords, and talking about Saudi Arabia. And you can just sort of feel palpably both Trump's fascination with Saudi Arabia and Saudi Arabia wanting to actually do a deal with Israel, but Palestine being the nut that's just in the way of that. And I'm interested, as you just drew a map, a really graphic map of what's going on in the region, that I think you think Iran is less out of it than a lot of other analysts are saying. How do you see that map changing as Saudi Arabia and Iran continue to compete in the region for security and essentially stature?
Hardly at all. I think the Abraham Accords don't matter for what happens in Gaza. I don't think the Abraham Accords matter for what happens in Lebanon, for what happens in Syria, or for what happens with regard to Iran. How does a peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Israel that's basically sanctioned or backed up by the United States influence any of those conflict scenarios?